Welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. I'm Joseph. Today, I'll be diving into 5 predictions for the next coaster at Cedar Point, from groundbreaking attractions to surprising transformations of your favorite classics. Come speculate with me. I think the first step to making good predictions is to rule out unlikely ones. There are certain coaster models that I think we can safely rule out, either because the niche is already filled by another coaster that isn't going anywhere, or because of an unwieldy footprint, or an unwieldy price tag, or both. First things first, Six Flags is not going to be buying any more hydraulic launch coasters. These are on their way out in a big way, and Six Flags hasn't bought one since 2005, and we all know how that ended for them. Cedar Point had Zamperla tear their hydraulic launch out of Top Thrill and install a series of LSM magnets. The hydraulic launch was unreliable, was expensive, had too many moving parts, especially compared to a magnetic launch, which has parts that don't ever come into contact with one another. Next, Cedar Point is not going to get another swing-launched coaster. Now, when I say a swing-launch coaster, I mean a coaster with a multi-pass launch and a rollback through those launches. So you move in one direction through a launch, you roll back, you pass through that launch again at least once. Now, these are very trendy right now, with Curse of the Werewolf opening in Epic Universe, the Flash Coaster opening at Aqua Show in Portugal, Flash Vertical Velocity at Great Adventure in New Jersey, all opened up this year, and Voltron Nevera opened last year in Germany. They all feature a swinging launch somewhere in their layout. And a few years back, Icebreaker debuted at SeaWorld Orlando, and that's one of the more popular coasters there still to this day. Now, some of these are shuttle coasters, some of them are full circuit coasters. So their capacity varies from ride to ride, but most importantly, none of these coasters are Top Thrill 2. Top Thrill 2 is not only the tallest and fastest coaster with a swing launch, but it's the tallest in the world, unless and until Falcon's Flight opens up at Six Flags Qiddiya. Formula Rossa in Abu Dhabi took the speed record back in 2010. It would be hard to market a smaller multi-pass swinging launch coaster in the park that has Top Thrill 2. What else are we not getting? Well, I can confidently say that I think Cedar Point is not going to get another Giga. Millennium Force isn't going anywhere. It's still one of their flagship coasters. I don't see the management putting another coaster in the park that fits that same niche, especially considering the cost of these coasters and how much space these coasters take up. You can't make a 90-mile-per-hour coaster into a twister that fits on a small plot of land. You need a lot of room to make turns at Giga Coaster speeds, and you need a lot of money to put a Giga Coaster anywhere. Now, Six Flags can afford another Giga Coaster at Cedar Point. Cedar Point brings in enough money where they can afford any coaster. But there's really no point in competing with themselves here. This same logic is why I think that we can rule out a launched wing coaster like Thunderbird at Holiday World in Indiana. There's no reason to spend millions of dollars on a new coaster just to rub the proverbial polish off of Gatekeeper. I think that anything that comes in that fills a niche that's already filled in the park is likely going to be coming in a replacement capacity, not sitting alongside. All right, now that we've established what we know we aren't going to get, let's take a look at my 5 predictions for Cedar Point's next coaster. Number 1, B&M Family Invert on Iron Dragon's plot. Iron Dragon will be 40 years old in 2027. There are only 5 of these inverted arrow coasters left in the world, and Arrow isn't around to produce replacement parts for it, having gone bankrupt in 2002 during the construction of X at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The inverted arrows that have closed have done so because of the maintenance costs incurred by the forces put upon the track by the swinging pendulum ride mechanism. It's not hard to imagine that Iron Dragon is getting harder and harder to maintain as the years pass by. On top of this, The lines for Iron Dragon are typically very short, even on busier days in the park. It's slightly popular with younger coaster fans, and many kids still count it among their favorites, but it doesn't do much, and its age is hard to ignore. My prediction for what would go in this place is one of the new B&M family inverts, like Wolf's Revenge at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, or the big Lego coaster at Legoland Shanghai. These coasters are very popular right now, 6 being announced or constructed worldwide over the last 2 years. Now, Cedar Point does put a family inverted here on Iron Dragon's plot, just a short walk down the midway from Raptor. I think the ride could be themed as a Junior Raptor. This would not only be a nod to the Raptor right down the midway, but also a nod to Cedar Point's history when Wilderness Run was named Junior Gemini. And imagine how cool a Junior Thrill ride would look painted up in Raptor green. It could give younger thrill seekers who are not ready for the Raptor a stepping stone to it. Still a very cool experience if you've checked out any of the other B&M family inverts. They're still cool rides. My second prediction for what Cedar Point's next coaster could be is a Premier Rides magnetically launched coaster. Now, this could either be in the new Alpen Fury style, with a sprawling layout that's full of airtime and inversions, or this could be a more typical spaghetti bowl coaster to better utilize space and have a smaller footprint. But if this is an Alpen Fury style, if this is a bigger coaster, and I'm going to go on a limb for Cedar Point and say that it would be, I'm going to put this underneath the Magnum in the space currently occupied by Cedar Point Shores. Now, I know there are people out there who enjoy Cedar Point Shores, and I have to imagine that most of them are locals, because I'm not really sure who is traveling all the way to Cedar Point, the roller coaster capital of the country, and then paying extra money to spend time in this water park. This is not an extravagant water park or a top tier water park by any means. And bear in mind, this is in the Great Lakes region, so water park weather, outdoor water park weather, holds up reliably for about 10 weeks out of the year, maybe 12 nowadays, but still about a fifth of the year. The park itself is only open from late April to the beginning of November because the weather gets so unwelcoming here in the Midwest. It's got a sting having 18 acres of your park unusable for the first 8 weeks of the season and the last 6 weeks of the season. The only notable slides in Cedar Point Shores are the drop slides, which are also available at every regional water park I've ever been to in the entire country. Cedar Point Shores is a mismatch in quality compared to the entire rest of the peninsula. Now, Alpen Fury at Canada's Wonderland in Toronto has made huge waves this year, and I think it would fit Cedar Point's style to take this trendy new coaster model and build a record-breaking version of it. Now, a 200-foot plus hyper launch with 10 inversions, sprawling out towards the beach and over Magnum's reverse helix down toward at the end of Magnum would be right in Cedar Point's wheelhouse. Now, barring this, even if Cedar Point isn't ready to let go of the water park, I think that a Premier Rides launch coaster is still in the park's future. They're very, very trendy. Again, if they're not ready to let go of the water park, they could put a spaghetti bowl type layout on a smaller plot of land. Number 3 is a mock launched racing coaster. Now, I'm putting this on Gemini's plot. Gemini is showing its age in a big way. I personally, if I was in charge, I would never get rid of this ride. I personally hope they never get rid of this ride. But the last few seasons, it's been rare to even see the park operate both sides. It's a racing coaster that is regularly not racing. The ride is about as rough as Cedar Creek Mine Ride, which is its neighbor just across the way, its fellow aero tubular steel, old school aero coaster, janky coaster. It's a touch less janky than Cedar Creek, but it's just as rough. It doesn't draw a fraction of the crowds that its neighbors in Steel Vengeance or Maverick do. And just like with Iron Dragon, Aero isn't around to help the park fix this coaster. When those old steel tube tracks start needing to get replaced, they're going to find themselves at a very serious crossroads. They can either keep investing in this nearly 50-year-old iconic relic or replace it. This has been a big year for the racing coaster model with the introduction of Stardust Racers at Epic Universe. Now, unfortunately, the coaster's been in the news for the status of reasons. I'm sure you've heard by now that a paralyzed man was allowed to board Stardust Racers, and he suffered a truly terrible fate on the ride. He did not survive the ride. My heart goes out to him and his family. I wish nobody ever had to go through anything like that. Despite all that unpleasantness, the ride itself has been proven to be safe, like in spite of the accident. The accident has been determined to be no fault of the ride itself. Stardust Racers has been universally applauded by enthusiasts and the general public alike as being an exciting and fun ride that's full of airtime, full of great forces. Imagine a Gemini built by Mach using this launch racing coaster platform. This could be a legendary reimagining of one of Cedar Point's most iconic and classic rides. On top of that, consider for a second that Stardust Racers has a cool lighting effect where the track isn't lit up at night, but the trains are. So they look like shooting stars on the track. This effect could be co-opted for the red and blue trains of Gemini. All you see approaching the ride at night is the streaking red and blue lights of the trains racing by one another. I'm calling this hypothetical racing coaster Gemini Rising to keep with the astrological theme that's been with the coaster since 1978. Number 4 is an RMC T-Rex on and around Millennium Island. Ever since Rocky Mountain Construction announced their concept for a full-scale single-rail coaster, enthusiasts around the world have been clamoring for a real-world installation. The Raptor model, a smaller-scale model, has been a huge hit, with some truly unique and inspired layouts on coasters like Jersey Devil and Railblazer. So far, been strictly the small-scale single-rail Raptor coasters. There have been no takers for the T-Rex. Not a single RMC T-Rex has been constructed or even purchased yet. Cedar Fair notably stopped buying RMCs in 2018. The reasons for this supposed falling out have been argued incessantly in all the coaster corners of the internet. I'm not going to get into those. But regardless of all of that, Cedar Fair is no longer calling the shots for Cedar Point. Six Flags is. As far as Six Flags is concerned, don't call RMC a comeback. They've been here the whole time. Considering that Cedar Point is eternally obligated to be on the cutting edge of coaster technology, always has to have a new record holder, always has to have a new first for the country. I think Cedar Point is one of the most likely candidates for an RMC T-Rex installation. This would go perfectly back in the Millennium Midway towards Frontier Town, with lots of usable space, famously stretching out over Millennium Island. The island currently only houses 2 overbank turns of Millennium Force that overlap on themselves. And then in the fall, it's home to a haunted trail. This was formerly also home to part of Snake River Falls, as well as a playground area for kids that has been closed since 2022. All of these closed attractions suggest that something is planned for the area. And where else but Cedar Point to install the world's first T-Rex? Number 5, the GCI Hybrid replacing the Blue Streak. I talked earlier about the Gemini being rough. Well, the Blue Streak is far, far worse. I rode this twice this season. It was rough in early August, and it was even worse in late September. I think those western winds blowing over the peninsula, coming over Lake Erie, and then blowing directly into Blue Streak, right into that old wooden structure, are not doing it any favors whatsoever. I know this prediction might upset some people because this is Cedar Point's only remaining wood track coaster, but I think one ride on this thing will show you that Cedar Point isn't overly interested in keeping that wooden track and that wooden structure from getting warped out to Kingdom Come. They have 12 newer coasters that are all made of a more durable and reliable material, and they still have to spend millions of dollars maintaining those every year, and those don't get rougher when it rains. This one does. So I think they've dedicated less resources to Blue Streak anyhow, whether they replace it or not. I personally would love to see a real wooden coaster installed at Cedar Point, but the problem arises when you consider how developed the park is. It would be difficult for them to tear down one single attraction and then put in a decent Woody in its place. Even Gemini's footprint is small compared to your average out and back coaster layout. I would love to see the Gravity Group or Intamin come in and install one of their prefabricated modern wooden coasters at Cedar Point, but I find it to be very unlikely. Especially the Intamin route, considering the absolutely staggering cost of their prefabricated wooden coasters. What I think is much more likely is a GCI hybrid coaster like Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun and KSTMO. These coasters use a wooden stack for track, like a traditional wooden coaster, but they're constructed on a steel frame. Now, if Blue Streak was replaced with one of these new hybrid models, it could reduce the maintenance cost of the coaster by a significant margin. The company could simply over-engineer the steel support structure and then restack the coaster every year. Like they could restack the track every year. This could keep the Blue Streak's ride experience essentially unchanged if they wanted to, but would make it much, much easier to keep it from getting as rough as it does. I'm calling this one the New Streak. And this New Streak could sit on the exact same footprint and could even have the exact same layout as Blue Streak if they wanted. The Zambezi Zinger was also actually a nod to an old wooden coaster that had the same name and that it replaced. So it wouldn't be the first time that the GCI hybrid layout was used to pay tribute to an iconic coaster of yesterday. Those are my 5 predictions for the next roller coaster at Cedar Point. How likely do you think they are? Am I full of it? Please let me know in the comments. I promise I'll read them all. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like. And if you want to join me for more roller coaster yapping, hit the subscribe button so I can invade your front page next week. Thanks again for joining me. Vertical Drop Viking out.